This is a recording about getting to the root of the problem. And when I think back to where my life became so difficult, and it has a lot to do with um, losing one's sense of humor. So this recording is about what happens when people lose their sense of humor, and that doesn't mean that a person, like, just because somebody has lost their sense of humor doesn't mean they're not trying to be funny. In fact, I think the harder a person tries to be funny, the more likely they have lost their sense of humor. Um, this sometimes happens with teenage boys trying to be funny. Uh, it's called roasting. So, roasting each other. And sometimes this is done with false accusations, falsely accusing someone of doing an appalling deed. This is otherwise known as slander or defamation as a joke. It's trolling, it's hurtful, it's lying, it's profane, it's potentially reputation destroying, it's not funny. I do not condone acts of malice passed off as humor. Steve Irwin was recorded saying, "You know, I'm an Australian and we have got the worst sense of humor. We are cruel to each other." And then from Proverbs 26:18 to 26, uh, suppose a crazy person shoots a flaming arrow that can kill. A man who lies to his neighbor and says, "I was only joking," is just like that person. So, language is very much a weapon, and through questioning or inquiry or slander, you can lose your sense of humor. Um, Dostoevsky writes, people really do like seeing their best friends humiliated, and a large part of the friendship is based on humiliation. And that is an old truth, well known by to all intelligent people. So I see somebody who's trying to be funny is often teasing, and a person who's teasing is often ridiculing. And if you're drinking alcohol and you've got some sort of hang up or you're oppressed about something, you're going to project your insecurities onto uh, your target. And it could be just exposing and ridiculing somebody's vulnerabilities, saying something that just isn't true at all. Um, it seems like people are when they're especially as they're teenagers, when they're being playful. Excuse me, when they're being playful, it's almost like they want to come close to death. So you can see how with really little kids, you can hang them up on the ankles, you can dangle them by the legs, you can flip them around. The kids really like being played with in a way where you're taking them to the edge. And teenage boys are in some ways even worse because it's verbal. You know, they're not necessarily as physically involved with each other. Sometimes it's the case they are, but they're more often tricking and degrading each other with all sorts of embarrassing nicknames and accusations. And I could go on and on. I'm not going to go into specific details. Um, but Julius Caesar has a quote. He says, "It is easier to find men who will volunteer to die than to find those who are willing to endure pain with patience." So a lot of people are willing to throw their life away. They're willing to destroy their own reputation, destroy the reputation of other people, all because they're intoxicated and then they're in the heat of the moment. So where does that leave me as I'm 44 years old and how I engage with people as an adult? I certainly don't try to be funny with them or try to ridicule or slander, defame, or make up lies just because some part of me might find it funny. Um, I'm going to read a few quotes. A clear plan relieves you of the torment of choice. So instead of being tormented by choices, you can have a clear plan and you don't have to be tormented by choice. Um, another quote is necessity delivers us from the embarrassment of choice. So in other words, when you realize that you have your food, clothes, shelter, cleaning supplies, and your all your necessities, then you have certainty. There's lots of things we can be certain about, and so the necessities in life are not choices; they're certainties. We know what we can do. Um, Another thing that's not a choice is a grievance. So the guy Saul below writes, I know how long and endless people's stories are when they have grievances and how tedious for everyone. So, you know, what do you do when you've got that resentment and that emotional buildup of pain and it's it's based on a grievance and you know how tedious it is for everyone. So you have an awareness there. Another quote is somewhere in every intellectual is a dumb prick. You guys can't answer your own questions. And you'll notice that when you're in the industry, the business, the helping professions where you're a patient in relationship to a therapist, um, you get a lot of needling questions, and a lot of the questions are not answerable. In fact, they're fallacies. The other day, I read about the complex question fallacy, where you ask a question that assumes a truth, and so I'll give you an example. Is it true that you're still beating your wife? That's an unfair question, and it presupposes something very insulting and reputation destroying about the recipient of the question. So the person who's on the receiving end of questions is the vulnerable one. The person asking the question is the one with the weapon. So I see being inquisitive and questioning somebody as ultimately weaponizing the relationship, where the one questioning is ultimately pointing the weapon and the one answering is eh, often in an impossible situation. You have to distract, you have to backpedal, you have to create some controversy just to cope with the question. Or you can call them out, or you can say, well, that's a complex question fallacy, and it's a logical fallacy. It's a trick question, and we don't always have trick answers for trick questions. And this next quote is for those of you who have ever experienced an emotional injury through noise or through some sort of signal. The only interesting side of the matter was the intimate design of the injury, the fact that it was so penetrating, custom made exactly to your measure. It's fascinating that hatred should be so personal as to be almost loving, the knife and the wound aching for each other. And that's that resonates with me because my ears, I call it being within an earshot, and I stay out of an earshot with people because what you'll notice in this world is there's a lot of people taking shots at your ears. And once that remark goes in, you have to cope with it. And sometimes it's an offensive noise. There's all sorts of signals coming in through the ears. Um, and this takes us back to the beginning of the video where people are joking and trying to be funny and trying to tease each other and ridicule each other. And often they're doing it through alcohol because otherwise they could never stand each other. Alcohol is that social lubricant that makes it so that you can actually put up with the other person. Without that alcohol, people would have less reasons to come together. A Ukraine proverb is drunkards know no danger. They have no sense of danger in when they're drunk. And these are all Ukraine proverbs that I collected. Fools love not the wise, and drunkards love not the sober. A lame man laughs at the blind. There are many lies, but barely one truth. So lies are everywhere, but truth barely exists. And finally, who laughs at you also cries for you. So remember when somebody has ridiculed you or tried to make a fool out of you or tried to destroy your reputation, that same person also has a soft spot for you, which is hard to imagine. But it's not the same as indifference. Um, a malicious person is not indifferent. They want to engage with you. Um, I'm going to move this conversation over to the. I shouldn't call it a conversation. It's me basically letting out some information. Um, for those of you who had some problems during COVID, so from 2020 to 2022, you might have noticed police wellness checks. Not everybody had police wellness checks where the police are coming to your door and taking you to the hospital, but in my case, it was 4 times. So 4 times a police officer came to the door. I should say a group of police officers came to my door, took me, took me to a hospital, and there I was examined by doctors. Uh, on the fourth time, the fourth visit, it was at nighttime. So the police came at night with a knock on the door, and this really spooked me because I had already been taken to the hospital a few times and I did not enjoy being transported. In one case, I was kidnapped, and taken 4 hours away from my apartment. So from Bridgewater to Yarmouth. Um, so when the police came the fourth time, I resisted arrest and I basically locked the door on them. I told them I was going to defend myself. Um, they forced their way into the apartment, tackled me to the floor of my apartment. One officer choked me from behind. Uh, they took me to, they cuffed me, took me to the hospital in handcuffs, interrogated me in one of the hospital rooms for about an hour. There's 4 police officers with one nurse. The nurse was not friendly. Um, they wanted me to tell them what the story was. So they were like, tell us the story. And I told them, I have no story. Um, now I do. Now I actually have a story. It's a series of police wellness checks and kidnapping, and finally forced drugging. So on the fourth arrest, I was taken to the hospital. I was forced drugged into a coma. Um, I was in the hospital for about a month, so a month in a psychiatric ward. Uh, During that month, I was force injected with Abilify, which is an antipsychotic. One of the side effects uh, of Abilify is tardive akathisia, a variant of tardive dyskinesia. This is an inner agitation that feels like being tortured from the inside out and drives people to move around in a vain effort to find relief. So a lot of tapping your foot and shaking your leg and pacing around, and it's really uncomfortable. So I get a bit of relief making these videos because to talk is exercises my demons, and it feels I get a bit of pleasure from speaking. Um, but akathisia is obviously horrible, and it creates a compulsion to move about and pace about. And, these antipsychotics they're powerful because I don't feel any anger anymore. I feel numb. I feel emotionally flat. I don't feel any indignation. I feel vacant most of the time on these antipsychotic injections. Um, and here's some quotes by Billie Holiday on dope. And he's when he says dope, he's probably referring to heroin, but he might be referring to cannabis as well. But he says, if you think dope is for kicks and for thrills, you're out of your mind. There are more kicks to be had in a good case of paralytic polio or by living in an iron lung. If you think you need stuff to play music or sing, you're crazy. It can fix you so you can't play nothing or sing nothing. And Billie Holiday says, dope never helped anybody sing better or play music better or do anything better. All dope can do for you is kill you and kill you the long, slow, and hard way. And it can kill the people you love right along with you. Um, and he says, in this country, don't forget, a habit is no damn private hell. There's no solitary confinement outside of jail. A habit is hell for those you love. And in this country, it's the worst kind of hell for those who love you. And so I haven't had much luck with marijuana smoking and cannabis smoking. I don't recommend it. Uh, we've got various role models like Willie Nelson and Bob Marley and Snoop Dogg and lots of different celebrities who endorse the drug. But for some of us, it hasn't worked. It's attracted attention from authorities, from children, from it's attracted all sorts of negative attention, and it hasn't had a good effect. Um, Lord Acton writes, liberty is prevention of control by others. So if we value our liberty, we have to take measures to prevent others from controlling us. Um, we all live in proximity to other people, and some people are more controlling than others. And I definitely had people try to control me. And sometimes it's about keeping the noise down. Sometimes it's about reducing the anger. Um, Sometimes it's related to a plumbing leak. Um, there's some things that have to be fixed. If you've got a leak coming through your apartment, down your shower and into the neighbor's apartment, the landlord has to fix that, and that requires action. And there's no choice there when it comes to problems and leaks and garbage and snow plowing and keeping the driveway clear. We have no choice. We have to work. And this is true for people who are on social assistance and welfare, is that you'll notice that there's still a lot of work to be done. and you have to you have to stay attentive, and you cannot fall asleep at the wheel. Um, there's so many things that have to have to be attended to, and these things are not choices; these are necessities. So I hope you get something in this video. I started by talking about joking and teasing and ridiculing and trying to be funny, and how people do lose their sense of humor, and it usually happens gradually and imperceptibly, and one day you're 17 or 18 years old, and you're trying to ridicule and make fun of your buddy, and you take it too far, and you might find that 20 years later he still remembers it. He doesn't forgive you. There's no forgiveness. There's I remember, it's that proverb, the tree remembers what the axe did.